Hey guys, and welcome to Betwixt the Books. We're doing another reading roundtable. This one is a free-for-all, open, just whatever you've been reading discussion type one. We have done ones that are themed in the past, and the next two are going to be themed going forward. So if you have never seen this, we literally just bring on some of our bookish friends to talk about books. There's now a pretty good backlog of them that you can go and watch other ones if you want to hear what some of our other friends are reading. It's just a pretty low-key, chatty type video where you can sit with us and just hear about some books, good, bad, meh. You'll never know. That's what we're here to talk about. So yeah, start with our introduction. So if you haven't seen some of these faces on our channel before, you can learn about them, but we will start with Gretchen.
You've probably seen my video. You've probably seen my face on videos
Singular.
on this channel before. This is going to be a really, really wild one that I'm sure will be heavily edited of myself later on. I do apologize. My name is Gretchen, and I'm usually either making solo romance content videos or making videos with Michaela. We've also been doing a lot of romance lately, although we did just release a true crime joint review that we just did, and it was possibly the best true crime book that we have ever read since I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. I'll link that up above when I put this up, but if you have not seen that yet, highly recommend that. It was a really good book, and we were really glad that we took a chance on a very pretty cover. So yeah, we like to read widely. It's one of the reasons that we do this channel, and I have brought books. I haven't made a nonfiction video in a really, really long time. It's something I haven't been reading them. I've just had a lot of romance advanced review copies I've been supposed to be getting out, but I am going to be talking about some political / history journalism nonfiction today.
And I am Anne. Gretchen and I worked together in a library and survived in a library basement during COVID, which was absolutely delightful. And Gretchen and I there discovered that about the only thing we could read during COVID was romance novels. And boy, we went through a lot of them. And I've retired from libraries due to arthritis in the hands. Not great to keep picking up books and shelving books and handling books if your fingers are going like, ow, 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 ow. So I also read all sorts of stuff at this point and am bringing, I'll mention 3 books that I've read that are really not romances, which I just realized as Gretchen was mentioning romance reviews. So there you go. I'll be back later.
My name is Josh. I am the producer and head panelist of the BookTube channel Literary Gladiators. Today I'm going to be talking about a book that I'm going to be reading in preparation for a book club that I'm going to be attending. But I also am going to be releasing 15th season of discussion for Literary Gladiators, should be debuting at the end of the month. And we're going to be working on our 16th season, and we will be filming that during the summer. I have several individual videos that I need to film. And if I'm given permission, a little bit at the end of my segment, I'm going to talk a little bit about the mock Newbery List project that I was working on. And one of the books is possibly going to be one of the 3 books that Anne talks about today.
I mean, permission, absolutely. If anyone has not yet, I know the Literary Gladiators has brought a lot of people to this channel. If you haven't heard about it, you should go check them out. Josh has been, and Literary Gladiators is one of probably our biggest supporter as our channel has gone along, and we would like to give that back. So absolutely, please do talk about that as well. Sorry, Michaela, not to cut you off, but I as a former children's librarian, I also got excited because the Newbery is one of my big awards.
It's going to be a smorgasbord today.
Oh, totally fair and totally fine to interrupt me. Hi, you've probably also seen my face around. I'm Michaela. I'm the other half of this channel. Generally, when I read books, it's something speculative. It's something queer, LGBTQ plus representative. I do read literary fiction, so on and so forth. I had every intention of coming with a nonfiction pick today, but I haven't read enough of it to feel like I can actually talk about it. I started reading Monsters of Fan's Dilemma, and I've read about 2 of the essays, and I am enjoying it. So like I can at least say that, and like at least the first 10% or so I've enjoyed. So maybe if I finish that by the next time it's relevant, I can talk about it again. But today I'm going to talk about fan fiction, because that's sort of where my brain is. I've had a rough couple of weeks at work, and that has led months, honestly, that has led me to just doing the bare minimum, which is reading the thing that my brain is hyper fixated on. So you're getting
The
some fan
thing that
fiction
makes you
content.
happy.
Yes, it gives me the serotonin, and that's all that I need.
Yeah, you're always like, I'm so sorry, I read more fan fiction. And it's like, you got to read what makes you happy.
Yeah.
Unless you're me and you read a romance novel followed by a really sad nonfiction book and then
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am very excited to talk about some nonfiction, just because I have not been able to make a lot of my nonfiction content. And so I want no one to be scared by the title of this, because this is going to get a lot less political than you think. I think this book is poorly titled. Just say that. I think it was like clickbait titled. So it is called Collision of Power: Trump, Bezos, and the Washington Post by Martin Barron. And so Martin Barron, if you are big into journalism history, he also goes by Marty Barron, but you may know his name because I read a review that was like, he's like the Forrest Gump of journalism. But basically what it means is he was running a paper in Miami during the 2000 recount. He was the editor-in-chief of the Boston Globe during the time that they made the movie Spotlight. So when they were doing all of the investigative journalism into the Catholic Church, and some other ones. So he's just like been at the helm of really important newspapers when important things have happened. And so in this one, it's when he leaves the Globe and he becomes the editor-in-chief of the Washington Post. And he is there for the transfer. He's like been in the job for a year when the Graham family sells the Post to Jeff Bezos, who is the owner of Amazon. And so the reason I said that the title is really misleading is because this is a journalism autobiography. And while like, you know, there is stuff that you can go out and read about how like Trump was like telling Jeff Bezos to make the Washington Post nicer to him, that's like not news. And he was doing that to like a lot of just his interactions with people. And it's very minimal. It's like not, so like the title is very clickbaity. What is really interesting about this book is the discussion of what journalism is today in like the 21st century, in the year 2024, from someone who is definitely, I would say, a traditionalist. And actually, he ends up butting heads with a lot of people at the Post who are younger, who are coming up, who see themselves more as activists. And he has a very specific idea of how he thinks that then like news reporters should be like, you know, they're not activists. I just report the news, right? And like there's this whole big thing about like individual reporters using their personal social media to do stuff. So like it has that title, and it's that title is like this much of the book.
Okay.
It's really not about it at all. And honestly, I was much happier with that. I think it's just such a fascinating, so well written book about how journalism got to the moment that it is today, and why journalism is so important, but also how deeply it's been impacted by the internet and the rise of social media and the different things that people like or institutions like the Post have done to try to remain relevant in like the era of news, and is actually like I really like books like this. I also read Carl Bernstein, who was like the half of Woodward and Bernstein, who broke the Watergate. He wrote one that was much more like an autobiography about his life and about journalism. And I don't know, I would never wanted to be a journalist, right? That's not something I ever, but like hearing people who do deep investigative journalism work is just really fascinating. And so this is certainly not the first book that I've read that was like clickbaity to have like current events in the title to get people to check it out. But I really want people who are just interested in journalism as an institution to like maybe take a closer look at this book. In the end, he really is writing to journalists. Like he's writing about like what it means to be a good journalist and a unbiased journalist, and what it means to just report the news and get the facts, like regardless of political opinions. And you don't have to agree with him. Like I said, like he's a very strong traditionalist. He is not shy about his views and how he's like, some of these young people are just, they're just dumb. But I'm fine with that because I don't have to agree with you. I'm glad that you stated your opinion and now I can assess it, right? With all the facts. So I do, yeah. If you are interested in investigative journalism, if you are an investigative journalist looking to make it onto a bigger paper, or if you're just interested in like understanding the current state of journalism, don't let the title keep you from reading it because it should have been different titled.
Do you fully think that title was picked because of like it would make like people like I guess in the political climate more attracted to it? I feel like that doesn't work though, because if you are picking up a book for something and then it's not that thing, you're not going to finish the book. You know?
No, I'm
Like
100% like this is not the first time that this has happened. But and I think what it was that there was like what they may have thought was the biggest news item that like Martin Barron's name might have been associated with recently was some of the reporting that was done on like Trump, Bezos, and the Washington Post. Because there was some really interesting implications on Amazon, things that were done by the Trump White House, but were they directly because of the Washington Post? Like you can't,
yeah.
Most
you
of the
know.
Washington Post articles are not very favorable toward Trump.
Yeah,
Or
and so
to the right, more so.
yeah.
But then again, I don't trust any outlet that is Jeff Bezos is high-profile multi-billionaire.
Right.
I think what's really interesting too with this book is that Martin Barron is very complimentary of Jeff Bezos, and I've seen some reviews of people who know of him and know him who were like, I fully expected Martin Barron to hate Jeff Bezos. And so they were really surprised that he spoke of him so highly, because he, in his time there, he's writing about how, you know, Jeff Bezos was like, you know, Martin Barron was like, this was around the time that people found out that he had been unfaithful to his wife and he was getting a divorce. And Marty Barron was like, we got to run this article. And Jeff Bezos was like, I get it. I know it's the news. And so like he seemed to be like a very like he was interested in the business, but didn't control the news. And Barron is quite effusive on that front. But I think it's very interesting. There was a news story that just came out about the new leader of the Washington Post trying to suppress a news article that was unfavorable to himself. So, you know, because Martin Barron has now left. He's retired. He wrote this after he retired. So because literally he realized that his differences with the Washington Post staff about the use of social media, he was like, I felt like a dinosaur and I didn't want to deal with it, so I left. So he is now retired. So yeah, it's like very, very heavy on the Jeff Bezos praise, which is not my favorite place to be, but go figure.
Exactly.
I'm very cautious on anything that I see online because it seems like every title that I see is slanted toward any particular side. And the first thing I do now is look at the source. Because they have the source on the bottom, wherever you, be it MSNBC, Fox News, Business Insider, The Hill, Slate, Washington Post.
Well, one thing that, you know, Marty Barron talks a lot about is like the death of the investigative journalism department, because doing good investigative journalism takes time, and the rise of the internet, there is no time anymore, right? Like if you want the clicks, you have to be the first one to an article. And it's also, it takes a lot of money, which a lot of these places don't have anymore. And so like that is like one of the things that he was really happy about was that, you know, the investigative staff at the Post, for example, had gone down because the Grahams couldn't afford to pay for it anymore. And then Bezos was like, here's the money. And they were able to beef back up some of the investigative staff. But I think, yeah, he's also very sharp-tongued about, I forget the exact phrase that he used, but like fast fashion journalism. You know, he's like, you know, every story should be researched for at least like 2 weeks and, you know, be completely like blah, blah, blah. And he left.
It's a race to, at this point, it's a race to be the first one recognized. Just look at Jimmy Carter, who's currently in hospice. He's been in hospice for 16 months, and you had all the networks waiting around his house, waiting to be the first one to report him back. And so,
Poor Jimmy.
Yeah.
Seriously. Gretchen, did he offer any sort of insights about where or how he thinks journalism is going to go, or is it mainly just recounting, you know, his perspectives at the present time?
No, his entire, and this is also what I mean about the title being different, and then I feel like the audience shifts towards the end as well, because for most of the book it feels like a fairly like the writing style is directed at like a general public, and towards the end he starts to direct address other journalists. Basically saying that, like, you know, people need to slow down, they need to do more research, they, you know, but he also realizes that his opinions are at odds with the current environment. So yeah, he's mostly just like trying to make a call of like, you know, people need to stop being like roadrunner speed pundits and like go back to like slow, careful, you know, report the news journalism. Yeah. So like I said, I think it was really interesting. Like I said, I don't agree with him at every point. But he is very clear in why he believes what he believes, which is, I prefer that to anyone who's like pretending to be objective and then, you know, they're sneaking in on the sides. So yeah, if you're interested in the state of journalism, I think that you should read this book, and not let which I think is ironic, the clickbait title itself. But who knows, he might not have had control over the title per se, because a lot of those decisions are made by publishers. So, but I think it's like a final irony on that book, to be honest. So now that I've brought down the house, and by brought down, I mean negatively brought down the mood. Anne, would you like to take us away?
Yeah, I may end up, I think I might try to do sort of run through 3 books that I literally just finished, just because they are not romances. And I don't think it'll take long. I'm not going to give any in-depth, but I'll give my perspectives from my point of view. The first book that I would recommend to people is sorry, wrong book. It's called Wayward by Emily Hart.
Yes.
It is, again, has gotten all sorts of, it sort of has been popular in the sort of literary fiction. It doesn't call itself literary fiction. They say, or they advertise it as fiction, literature, and then historical fiction, which seems like, you know, can't you just put the literary and the fiction together and get literary fiction? But it's essentially about women from crossing over 5 centuries. One woman, Kate, in 2019 is she's in a relationship that is just horrid, and she ends up getting somewhere out of the past comes a great aunt who sort of secretly leaves her a small a small place called Wayward. And then you go back to 1619, a woman by the name of Altha is being tried for witchcraft or for being a witch, essentially. And the book essentially opens up on her, being in the prison, heading off to, I don't even know if they do trials for witches. I thought it was kind of a cut deal. Once they decided you were worthy of testing, they just did it. But she's awaiting trial for the murder of a farmer who was run over by his own herd. And somehow she came into the foray of being guilty, or being accused of being guilty. And then we hit sort of World War II, 1942. There's a woman, Violet, who's trapped in a family estate, trapped by societal rules and can't get out of it. And somehow you get a sense that all of these three women are related, and the book sort of runs these narratives together and sort of weaves the three narratives together. And they're essentially all women who are sort of influenced by nature, not in the sense that we think of, witchcraft and casting spells, but they have the power to feel nature and the power to use nature, or to sort of somehow connect with it. And so the stories weave out and everything ends up fine, or not that everything ends up fine, but things end up okay for these three women in the story and all the women who have this sort of connection. So it ends that way. But to me, the beginning was so heavy. I mean, I just keep thinking of Michaela and Gretchen. You sit there and you're already like horrified and terrified by, you can already feel it coming. You can just feel the sort of the weight and the heaviness. And particularly as a woman in our current world, to have a woman who's literally being abused and cornered by her husband, someone who's sitting in a prison cell about to head off to be tried for being a witch. Then the third woman whose, father has essentially locked her and promised her to someone, who ends up raping her. It's so much oppression against women that I was just like, oh God, I don't want to read this. But it's really, really well written. So it's worth getting. I mean, I would encourage people to try it and try to get through it. The end is a little bit, from my perspective, was a little bit sort of, okay, well, it's nice that there's sort of a magical nature connection for all of these women and this particular little house. But again, sort of hitting that topic to me just was a hard one. I would have, if I was Michaela or Gretchen, I would have said, yeah, no, we're not going. Just to let you know, I got through I got through the beginnings of establishing the stories, and then I had to go to the end to make sure it was like, is this worth my time? And then I wasn't sure at the very end either. So I went back a couple of more chapters and went through those, and then a couple of more, until I'm like, okay, I guess I'll go through the middle. So
it's an interesting way of reading, and read the beginning, read the end, then read the middle.
Completely bonkers. But if you're really, I mean, sometimes stuff hits you, and I sort of felt, it had gotten such good reviews, and it really was. The writing was so good. Emily Hart can set it can set depression on your shoulders in a weight that you have never felt before. But again, I would recommend it. But the reason I think it's lit fic is because it's so heavy. I mean, just those topics. I mean, even if you put them as clickbait, I'd be like, yeah, I don't think so. But, it was interesting. I thought it was an interesting book. So that was my first one. I would recommend give it a try. And if you can't get past parts 1, 2, and like, the first 3 or so chapters, go to the end and then do the backwards climb until you finish the book, and then do it your way. The next book, if anybody has any questions, go ahead. But my next book that I wanted to present, so that was not a romance. There were interesting romantic things happening in this movie there's I think it was the Violet, the 1942. There were sort of relationships with other women and women. It was interesting. It wasn't sort of straightforward, male, female. I really appreciated that. Just, wow, throw it back into history in a time when probably never would have happened, but it was good. The next book that I just wanted to quickly mention is a book called Dear Wendy by Ann, A-N-N, Zhao, I think, Z-H-A-O. It's YA fiction, YA literature, LGBTQIA plus fiction. And this was essentially a story of 2 students at Wellesley College. I'm not sure if it was actually set during the pandemic, but Ann Zhao wrote it while she was a student during the pandemic at Wellesley. So you've got someone of college age writing about college age students about, particularly Wellesley College. It has a lot of sort of gender and sexuality are part of the environment that is explored and thought about and lived. But these are 2 characters, Sophie and Joe, who are 2 aromantic and asexual college students. And they engage in an online feud. They each set up, there's a Dear Wendy and there's a Dear Wanda. And one is a little bit more serious and one is a little bit more flippant as people, send them questions. But they unknowingly are getting to be friends. They don't know that the other is the other. So they essentially become friends. And, you can imagine the conflicts that happen.
So they're each other's online enemy, but in real life they're friends, and they don't know that they're also the enemies. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And
Okay.
it's not, again, but it was a good. I really appreciated the sort of ASPEC identities sort of being explored in the book. College life, I thought, was interesting to see from, someone who's literally been there less than 30 years ago. Sort of, it's kind of like an odd love story about 2 people who are not and will not be in love. And so it's not your typical, it's not one of the books we read down in the basement of the library, Gretchen. But I liked it. And I really appreciate, and I've said this before with you guys, I appreciate YA books that teach me about stuff that I hadn't thought about from this particular point of view, for this particular narrative. So again, I would recommend it. And sort of from that, I jump into my last book, which is like a middle school YA book. I didn't really realize that those were in the same category because they're very 2 different ages to be writing about. So I don't know.
Well, college age is now supposed to fall under new adult.
Oh, is that? No, this one.
But
It doesn't. It exists, but it doesn't exist. But it exists. Yeah.
Yeah. That would make more sense to me because it feels like to me, it feels like 2 very different audiences.
Yeah.
And the last book I think is one that Josh will list as well. It's called What Happened to Rachel Riley by Claire Swinarski.
Yeah, I would say that.
Yep. And it is a multi-award winner. The list was long. The list was almost longer than the sort of listing of the book. So this book essentially was it was essentially about a new girl who moves to a new school, and she tries to figure out how one of the popular girls from last year is sort of the pariah of the school this year. It covers issues of sexual harassment, middle school boys touching girls where they shouldn't, and then creating online, tallying it, and then they've come up with a plan of what they're going to do when they get, when the end of the year comes around. So it covers a lot of topics that are really heavy and I think also it covers it well because it pulls you in a little bit like a mystery, like, why doesn't anybody like this person? Why, is she an outcast? Why won't anybody talk about her? And so from that sense, I thought it was really well done, really clever beginning that sort of begs an answer and it pulls you into the story. I thought the building of clues and possible stories was interesting. Also, again, sort of really gradually well done. I liked the players. I mean, there wasn't any player in the story who seemed like really evil. You didn't suddenly pick out one and go, oh my God, just a terrible human. And again, I think that sort of fits my adult impression of, middle school somehow. This seemed like a good group of, just in general, they seemed like they were sort of cohesive in a way. And I also liked that the main characters, Anna, who is the one who was the new girl who decided that she's going to do, going to figure what this story out is, figure out the mystery. She had a strong interest in being a podcaster. And the other girl, the one who, Rachel Riley, the one who the title is named after, the one who's the pariah, her passion is violin playing. And that also that gets explored and is sort of embedded into the story. So those were all really cool things about the book. My only thought as an adult who has a no longer so young kid, but a younger human who throughout her entire middle school and high school and probably even today goes like, why would I read a book that's written for my age by adults? And what I think, or at least one of the things that she dislikes, is this sort of preachy quality that comes across sometimes. Like, here's an issue that you should think about, and here's the right thing that you should do about this issue. And the character Anna sort of comes out with some of these statements every now and then, or thought that, like, oh, here's what the brochure about sexual harassment in middle school said you should say, and you should cover. And I don't know that that's true. Piper's perspective, my daughter's perspective is her perspective. But I felt it here. I felt it on occasion, even though I think the book actually was phenomenal. And I can see why it is being used to, as a group read or in schools. It hits a topic that I suspect most people don't think about in this way. So
on one hand, I would kind of agree with your daughter Piper, but on the other hand, I don't think it was. I think that it was so well written that I think that all of us should be reading it. I think that people within that age, the middle school age range, should be reading it. I also think that me as an adult, I'm so happy that I read it.
Yes, I would completely agree.
I mean, I have to also say that I agree with Piper. Just like obviously I've not read this book, but I also know, and I feel like books in general for kids have gotten better on this, which is just like, I think we've all come to recognize that like none of us wants to read a book where we're being preached at. And I mean, you can even get that in adult books, right? Where they're just like, blah, blah. And I think especially as a kid, when you're still trying to like figure it out. I mean, I'll be 30 next week and I'm still trying to figure it out. But like, as a kid, if I ever felt like I was like, this is an adult who just wrote this book to just like make me feel bad about my behavior or something, that would definitely turn me off. Right. But to the other hand, though, it's also like when some of the books were like, here's how you navigate this situation, it can also be like, thank you, because I have no clue and no idea. So, and even if it is just one example of it, which I mean, all books are only ever one example of a thing, right? It's just so good to potentially have that get to someone who's like, here's a possible way through.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this book was, like I said, the book is really well done. As Josh said, it is brilliantly written. It is clever in how you get into it. It is clever what it just is. It's a really good book. There's a reason it got this many rewards, and there's a reason that people are using it.
And
It
the
does, yeah,
you
it
first.
just echoed that. So there were a couple of things that just sounded like, it really did sound to me like it came off the brochure or something. It's still okay. It's fine, but it was just that, like, you know, a little bit more editing, and those, like, it really was, it wasn't even a handful, but it's just like, oh, it's a little bit too much. But I'm thrilled that this is out there. I mean, it presents an issue that I can just imagine for a middle schooler. It's like, is someone allowed, like, is that okay? Like,
Something that stood out with what happened to Rachel Riley in my mind was the format in which the many formats it was written.
yeah,
There's you have the emails, which
right,
you've got they have sometimes flyers, texts,
yeah,
general first person narration on Anna's behalf. Uh, I think that, I mean, the probably the best job that I've seen of anybody going against the traditional format.
yeah, I would have to agree. I'm with
I
you on
will
that,
have to
Josh.
look
It's
at
brilliant.
that up because I know I
Yeah,
have it at work because of it being part of the Rhode Island Middle School Book Awards
yeah,
shortlist. So it's
yeah.
definitely one that I can get pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's worth it. Really is. It's worth doing. And I always would love to hear. It's just funny how everybody reads a book and they hear something different than another person does. So you guys did it, and let's get together next month and contemplate this book.
I think the most important thing is that I cared for the characters.
Yes, yes. Like I said, the cast of characters was great.
Yes. I think caring for them really means something. And when you're reading a book where you can't stand any of the characters, it really brings it down.
Yeah,
It can be very well written, but if you can't stand the characters, like in Giovanni's room, then it really has an impact, negative impact on the movie
yep.
already. The book that I'm going to be talking about and that I'm currently reading is one that I'm reading in preparation for a book club that I'm going to be attending for the first time. And that is Monster in the Middle by
Mhm.
Tiffany Unique. Uh, the theme was Caribbean literature. And I thought would you be okay if I read the blurb?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the blurb that when Fly and Stella meet in 21st century New York City, it seems like fate. He's a Black American musician from a mixed religious background who knows all about heartbreak. She's a Catholic science teacher from the Caribbean looking for lasting love. But are they meant to be? The answer goes all the way to their parents' earliest loves. Vibrant and emotionally riveting, Monster in the Middle moves across decades from the US to the Virgin Islands to Ghana and back again to show how one couple's romance is influenced by the family lore and love stories that preceded them. Exploring desire and identity, religion and class, passion and obligation, the novel posits that in order to answer the question, who are we meant to be with, we must first understand who we are and how we came to be. I'm a third of the way in, and I'm not really getting much of what that blurb has to say. A lot of it has to do with uh, Fly's parents thus far. I mean, we're getting a good taste of Fly and his upbringing. We're at the point where he's at college, but the it has a lot to his parents are very his father is a very uh, large presence, a very uh, large, very large presence. But it does it to me. They're very self-righteous and important characters. I don't really have much. I don't really care for any of them. The father is going religion by religion, seeing where he finds the greatest sense of salvation. Lai is just he's got a lot of sexual passions. He's fallen for somebody who is very much involved with the church, but yet she's she's not doing a fine job abstaining. But I and the other thing to keep in mind is that this book was actually uh, it was actually all of the chapters were published separately in literary magazines at different times, and then rewritten to connect with this story. So they're practically all excerpts. For instance, the first chapter was published in Agni in 2013. There's one of them was in the New Yorker. There's one of them did make it to the best American short stories after being in the Harvard Review. They're just one of them was in the Caribbean Writer. One of I see, Southampton Review. But I'll have to let you know when I'm done. I'll probably do a review, but I'm not liking it thus far.
Oh,
I'm so fascinated by this idea of publishing them all in different literary magazines. If it's supposed to be one cohesive, wow.
I've seen that Ray Bradbury produced Fahrenheit 451 as it started out as a multiple short works. At least one of them, it was called The Fireman. Flowers for Algernon started as a short story and then turned into a novel.
Yeah, that I'm familiar with. And I'm also, I mean, obviously, and like serialization was also how we used to get our books all the time. But I just like the idea of that, to put them in so many, I mean, the places you just named are such disparate places.
And they weren't released chronologically either. They were released in separate, like it was just, then they pieced them together.
So
wow.
Can't quite wrap my head around this.
Yeah, right now, and you can tell there's each of the chapters is written differently, because sometimes they sorted out 1, 2, 3, 4, et cetera. But some of them have titles to them. Some of them are just split by just like what you call it, dot, or like a literary looking diamond.
Yeah. And I also think, I mean, I don't know, I mean, obviously every reader is different, but I also know that when a story feels like choppy or something, that also keeps me from really sinking in and connecting with the characters. And so I'm wondering if like that has something to do with like not being able to really care about the characters either. Because when I'm annoyed with the writing style, I'm just like, no.
Chronologically, it flows, but it's just that, to me, it's very hard to like these characters.
Well, I am so fascinated. And you said you're doing this for a book club?
Yes.
I am so fascinated too, because a book like this too, I mean, I will say I kind of almost like it better when no one likes the book, because then it's just like a very fun conversation. But I will be so fascinated to hear not only what you think when you're done, but also like how other people find it as well. I think it's what a good book for discussion. Let's put it that way.
On Goodreads, it averages 3.2 stars.
Oh. Well, maybe somebody will like it. That's the other fun way. You have someone
I mean,
really loves it and someone really dislikes it, and that's like, oh, it's fun to go head to head.
Would be interesting to see. But I also wanted to make mention of the fact that I just finished I was doing I was referring to the 2024 mock Newbery list on Goodreads. There were several books on there, but I picked and read 7 of them. They include, I'm going to be doing a video about it too, because I would like to do it for the 2025 Newbery list as well. But What Happened to Rachel Riley? It was Artemis Spark and the Soundseekers Brigade. When Sea Becomes Sky by Gillian McDunn. Soundseekers Brigade was written by Kimberly Berarkana. First Time for Everything by Dan Santat. This is a graphic novel. Simon Sort of Says by Erin Bow, and this is the only one that got honored by Newbery. I was hoping that one to me wasn't even the strongest one. Good Different by Meg Eden Kuyat, and Finally Seen by Kelly Yang. And they touch upon so many different issues, from environmentalism to autism to someone who is Chinese moving to the US with their family. And we also first experiences, and then also sexual harassment. So
I had no idea Dan Santat had released a full graphic novel. He has done some of my favorite picture books. So I was like, I felt visceral when you like put that up. I was very excited.
I reviewed A First Time for Everything as the single video, but I will be touching upon all of them together. But First Time for Everything has to do with Dan Santat and his experience between middle school and high school, taking a 3-week trip to Europe.
I will definitely have to go back and watch that. I'm very excited.
Mm-hmm. It was very good.
Yep.
It was one of my favorite books that I read last year.
I think your books are my next to reads, Josh. I'm like, I'm just gonna go get all of them.
You should definitely check them out. I think I would recommend those 7 more so than Monster in the Middle thus far. If I'll let you know if something miraculous happens and it ends up jumping up in star rating, but I doubt.
Occasionally books can surprise us that they weave themselves together, but usually it's a different kind of weaving than you described.
Yeah, I'm a sports fan, so I know enough about being on both ends of the comeback. In particular, a New York Football Giants fan, so.
My turn?
Yeah.
Alrighty. I'm going to be talking about fan fiction. Again, if you have never seen one of these and you're like, Michaela, what the hell? You can see them behind me, but my brain has been hyper-focused on Stranger Things. Most specifically, usually they're Steve and Eddie. Eddie being the weird metalhead D&D player and Steve Harrington being the preppy jock character. And I just really like their flow with each other, and as does a lot of people, because Steady became like the #1 fic pairing on AO3 literally within like 3 months. Like it was like surpassing Harry Potter and Draco. Like it like surpassed Supernatural, like all of these like really established fandoms, and they just wiped the board with how many fics come out for them. But today I'm going to be talking about a fic that's more Steve focused than it is Steve and Eddie paired together. It's tagged as pre-study because Steve still definitely has a crush on Eddie Munson. But the focus of this fic is actually Steve and Jonathan Byers. So if you have never seen Stranger Things, Jonathan Byers was introduced in season 1. He kind of stole Steve's girlfriend in season 2, and by that we mean Steve and Nancy never really worked together as a pairing, although it seems like the Duffer Brothers want to put them back together, or at least that's sort of what the directorial view has been based on last season. But there's a scene in the first season where Steve and Jonathan get into a fist fight, and the thing that starts that fist fight is I think that Steve calls Jonathan queer. And then they start fighting each other. This fic takes place after season 4, at the Byers' house. Like, all of the characters that you know and love of the show are there, and they're hanging out. And Will, Jonathan's little brother, says something that basically implies that he's gay, or like outs himself. And in the show, in the canon of the show, Steve and Jonathan don't interact very much, but Jonathan is a protective older brother, and he immediately like clocks Steve, pushes him outside, and starts basically reading him the riot. Like, if you say anything to Will, I will like beat you up. I'm gonna be so pissed. Like, you cannot make him feel bad about this. On like Steve's canon arc in the show, his best friend is a lesbian. Like he's not the person that he was in season 1. So like, but Jonathan doesn't know that, so he's yelling at Steve, and Steve's getting upset. Like, why would you think I would say anything? Like, I'm not gonna say anything. Obviously, I'm not gonna say anything. And then in that altercation, Steve winds up coming out for the first time to Jonathan Byers. So basically being like, how would I say anything? I'm bisexual. Like, I'm not, like, I'm part of the, I'm in the LGBTQ. Like, I'm not gonna say anything. And there's this like really funny moment where Jonathan clocks Steve, like, it takes that information in, turns and looks at Eddie and goes, oh. Like, okay, no, yeah, all right, I see what's going on here. And Steve's immediate reaction is, you can't tell anyone. You can't say, allies. So it was just a really cute fic with 2 characters that don't interact very much on the show. They're kind of pitted against each other a lot of the times, and I really like fics that basically take in the canon, and they're like, well, we know that Steve and Jonathan don't interact very much at all, so Jonathan wouldn't know the character development that we know, but also like, what sort of interactions might that create? And that's one of the things that I really like about fan fiction, of like, we're going to pluck these characters and put them down into a situation in their own world. It could be a completely different world, but we're going to kind of play with what that might look like. Someone said that fan fiction is like playing Barbie dolls with your favorite character. So yeah, that's sort of what it felt like. So yeah, I highly recommend it. It's called Coming Out. It's by ladyxdarcy, and it's on AO3, which I'm sure I'll send the link to Gretchen so that we can have it in the description down below. It's only like 3,000 words. It's like literally one scene. But it was just very funny. It was very well written, and I really enjoyed sort of a relationship that we don't get to see, a friendship relationship that we don't get to see very often, because the show has them in separate areas most of the time. They don't really interact. But it would be cool to see them sort of come back after the negative experiences that they both had with each other, to work together and kind of be like, grow a friendship there, a bond there. So yeah, highly recommend it. It's Pride Month, so no bi erasure over here.
I do think that's the fun part about like every time, like when you talk about fan fiction or other people that I know particularly that are into it, is like there's just so much more character work that it's like almost like the stuff that like if you were writing like a book sometimes has to get cut for like plot development, right?
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
this is the time to like really slow down and have like character stuff happen.
The character study, I feel like, works really well in a fan fiction format, especially little moments like this, because most of the people who are reading the fic are very well grounded in what the character are like. You don't have to do all this fluff of like learning a new person, but that's also one of the reasons every time like a fan fiction is turned into a real book, I feel like it doesn't work, because when you take out the fact that your audience knows everything about these characters already, you don't have enough characterization in the book itself. So when you get some of those fan fiction novels, I feel like that's like the negative to it, but then it's a positive when it's an actual fan fiction. If you know the references that are being made, like this scene doesn't necessarily make sense if you don't know the fact that the last sort of memory that Jonathan has with Steve that has anything to do with the queer characters is being called a slur and then a fist fight. Like, of course he's going to be protective of his little brother when he comes out. And of course Steve's going to be like, why are you coming after me? It's been like 4 years. Like, I was just a shitty little kid. Like, and I've grown since then. Oh yeah. Like, we haven't talked. Like, you don't know that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Having
Honestly,
said that, I
never
really
watched
like-
Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Josh.
I honestly never watched Stranger Things. It'd be the kind of show I'd like because of I think it's more horror
Sci-fi horror.
inspired,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's speculative, and that's exactly right up my alley. The one thing I do know is that Gaten Mazzarino, his hometown is 20 minutes away, 15,
Oh.
20 minutes away from where I live.
That's awesome. Yeah. Gayton's cool. I went to see Sweeney Todd on Broadway when he was playing, but he wasn't there that exact
Oh no.
thing. And I was like, of course I get the understudy. But it's okay. It was
Him
still
being from
really, really great. Good play. Highly recommend it. Super fun.
And being from my area, I know plenty of people that have had opportunities to meet and have photo op. And like, it was randomly nice.
He seems like a well-grounded kid for being like definitely in the spotlight growing up. Based on like the interactions and stuff that I see online from him. So yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm hyper fixated on it. I watched season 1 of Stranger Things when that came out and then didn't watch anything else for years. And then TikTok was like, hey, we're just going to show you a lot of edits of these 2 characters. And then I became emotionally invested. And then I was like, okay, I should probably go back and watch the actual source material. And then I did. I do feel like season 1 is probably the strongest season overall. Yeah. And then the other seasons have things that I think they do really well. But if you just wanted to try it, I think you could watch season 1 on its own and like feel satisfied. Like, you don't necessarily need to watch any more if it's not your thing. But season 1 was definitely like really good. Like, I know why Stranger Things got so popular, and it is like a really solid season.
Yeah.
How many seasons were there total?
There's 4 and the last one is going to come out, so 5 overall.
Okay.
And I think I would agree, Michaela, that season 1 was it was truly a really well done piece of sort of television.
Yeah.
I've seen, I think I've certainly seen 2 and 3, but I'm not sure if I saw 4, and clearly haven't seen 5 since it's not here yet. But I love
So you cannot see the future.
She's like, I got a pre-screening of 5.
Despite being a woman and having natural forces and being connected with nature, I do not have the ability to see television that has not come out yet.
Yeah.
I'm working on it, Gretchen. It's going to require the cockroaches, though.
Season 4 was really interesting because it was filmed during the pandemic. So it has like some constraints. Like, it's very like small unit groups. And I think that was because of like limitations on how many people they could have on set at any given time. So it's more like weaving narratives than it is like they're all parts of, I mean, they all have like little Scooby-Doo groups that go on in the show, but more so I think in season 4. And I feel like it's kind of to its detriment. They felt like they had to work around the situation that was going on.
Right.
But it's definitely not a bad season. And obviously I got Eddie out of it, and Eddie's like one of my all-time favorite characters. He's so fun and interesting, and he's got like over an entire season, like 45 minutes of screen time, and still like one of the most beloved characters that came out of TV last year or 2 years ago, I feel like.
Have to check it. My suspicion is that I didn't see it, so I'll go back and check it out. But I also loved your metaphor of, it's like fan fiction and Barbie, playing Barbies, because those of us who did play with Barbies long ago, it's like, oh, this makes total sense.
Yeah. You're like, if
I so get it now, and I understood why people liked it already, but I had something about that was like such
it hit you
a
like,
dime.
this is why.
Like I felt like my world shifted slightly, like on a dime, just slightly. Oh,
Yeah.
that's what I didn't quite know how to put into words. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Yes, yeah. So a lot of fan fiction comes out of either things of like an outrage at what happened to characters in canon, like Eddie dies. And
Right.
so people are like, hell no, we're gonna make Steve save Eddie. Like that character's too cool. You can't kill him off. We're gonna keep him alive in the fandom. But then there's also just like a lot of fandom. There's a lot of queer spaces in fandom because of a lot of queer baiting on TV. They don't get to see it in canon, so they're like, we're gonna give you these scenes that you kind of wanted that were implied but you never got.
Right.
It's an interesting space, but it is definitely its own style of literature. Like I get why it doesn't work for people. It's hard to read fan fiction if you don't care about the characters. Like you can't just like pick up any random fanfic. I mean, you could, but like I feel like it's hard.
But should connect you with Piper. She's she reads fan fiction of I'm not even sure what it's at various points I've heard of different things, and it sort of came in, and don't ask me to remember what it was, which one.
It's totally fair. So yeah, I do recommend that one. For sure, coming out.
So this was a unthemed reading roundtable. So we basically told everyone to bring whatever. And it's not even just 4 books. It wasn't just 8 books. There was so much literature running around in here of all different types. And that is what is so wonderful about this. I feel like I mean, I had such a visceral reaction to just one of Josh's books alone, like that I need to like go leave and now read. But so hopefully there was a little bit of something for everyone here. We would like to thank Josh and Anne so much for taking time out of their day. It's always so wonderful to see them and have this wonderful moment of book talk.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And yeah, I will link Josh's videos either as cards or down below, because the Literary Gladiators channel is definitely something that you want to check out if you didn't come from there. And next up on the docket for Betwixt the Books content, Michaela and I are planning to do a arc review of Chuck Tingle's new book, Bury Your Gaze. This is a little bit out of the genre wheelhouse for me, so we are going to see how this goes. But I've always wanted to read a Chuck Tingle book. If you do not know who this author is, just go Wikipedia.
Yeah, just go Google his name.
Just go,
just have a good time.
It's Chuck Tingle is a chosen name. Just start there, and you go off on your own.
Yes.
And then we also have another reading roundtable planned for next month, and that one is mildly themed in the sense that we told people it's one of our buddy reading challenges, but we asked people to just read a book that has been on their TBR or to be read list for a very long time, and we are allowing for it interpretation of what very long time means. It might mean a decade, it might mean a week. Like it's not really we're not being strict about what time
We're not
frame
enforcing it. Like, it's not older than 3 months.
Yeah, there's no enforcement. Because we just like coming on and chatting with our friends and seeing what everybody's going to bring. So I know for a fact I still have not chosen my book for that yet. So I don't even know what I'm bringing. So we will see you either for that review that the two of us will do together, or this next reading roundtable, both of which will be a massive adventure that will go in some way we don't even know yet. So we will see you then. Bye.
Keep reading.